So, welcome back to the Intentional Wealth channel. You are watching a video in our series about the 4% business owner. I'm Cher Cunningham, your business coach, and our consultant and financial advisor, CFO, Jim Pillow. So this conversation, right, is the coach and the consultant.
Exactly.
We tend to see things from a little bit of a different perspective, which is a hugely valuable thing for our viewers and for our clients, because realistically, being able to see from those new perspectives is where you get objective and where you gain control.
Right. The people and the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that our ability to disagree or agree in ways that just expand the conversation are some of the things that are very valuable. I talk to people and I tell them, often when I meet a client, they're stuck in this little box of what they see, what they know, and the solution is on the outside of that box.
Right.
If the solution was inside the box, they wouldn't have a problem and they wouldn't need these conversations. They'd already have solved it.
So much value in different perspectives on just day-to-day stuff, as well as, more importantly, even on problems that you're trying to solve.
Absolutely.
Problems that maybe even you don't know that you have.
Oh, that's a place we spend a lot of time, isn't it? Because you just don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
Often you start the business and you just say, I'm really good at this, and I know it. But what you don't know is some of the business know-how, some of the decision-making power of having the financial, and also knowing who you are, knowing your strengths, and making those meld into a business that loves you back. I love that phrase.
Bringing the right team to bear. Yes, business loving you back.
And so often as well, one of the things that we do is just confirm for our clients, yes, you're right. And let's help you take your business more seriously. One of those places we talked about last time was the Shareholders agreement, that you need to plan for the success you're going to have. And even though you love each other as shareholders, as business owners, as partners, as childhood friends who are now creating something together, that's the time to take it very seriously and put it on paper.
Absolutely. It's so valuable to have that clarity going into what is going to be a very complicated relationship. And the more successful it gets, the more complicated it gets, in lots of different ways. Hopefully not interpersonally, but if interpersonal becomes a problem, then you're going to want to have thought through what your original intentions were for clarity. You can go back to that document and make sure everybody's still on the same page.
Right. And so if you watch that episode, way to go. It's a very good one. Even if you've already incorporated, right? Looking back retroactively and saying, have we captured all of the meaning, especially if you're now more successful than you thought you would be.
Right.
That is one of the interesting challenges, and why I say take your business seriously, is because if you plan for success, wonderful, big vision success, most people don't. Most people say, I'm going to feel it out for the first year, but then success happens to them in that first year or two, and they say, now when do I put the foundation under my business?
And very common for our clients to arrive as they're achieving that level of success and gaining an appreciation that there are holes in their understanding of how their business works, or how business works generally. And when there are partners involved, we're often having a look at the original drafting of that shareholders agreement. We're not lawyers, but at the original drafting of the shareholders agreement to see if, in the context of the success that's occurring, whether that document is robust enough. And often we will work with the client and their lawyer on enhancing the shareholders agreement to take into account this sometimes surprising success, hopefully planned success, but it does create the need for having a look at that document at least once in that journey.
Right, and having that conversation with people who aren't lawyers can be valuable, because lawyers deal with problems, whereas you and I tend to deal with intent. Right? Capturing that intent, and kind of then you can take that intent and take it to the lawyers to translate into bulletproof.
Yes, and I think a pretty good example of that, and some of our viewers may have experienced the drafting of a prenup agreement, those are very personal documents. They very much need to reflect the intent of the two parties. Shareholders agreements are exactly the same. So there are templates. Every shareholders agreement should have this clause, and every shareholders agreement should have this clause. But the way those clauses are worded and the outcomes of the resolutions of invoking those clauses is very dependent on the intent of the parties at the time the document's written.
And a lawyer doesn't necessarily encourage or create the atmosphere of playing with and brainstorming intent. More so, they are focused on getting things in place expediently because they may be $300, $500, $600 an hour, and they are using their time very efficiently, which can be very intimidating for someone who this is their first time creating that shareholders agreement. It might be the 1,000th time the lawyer has done it. And knowing that you're forking out $500 an hour, you might just take the advice without giving the lawyer your input. And I think that's a great place that we take people is, what are you building? Who are you?
And it's interesting to, so better to have a shareholders agreement than not. Even if the shareholders agreement is not fully customized to your intentions, because in these startup relationships, I think we found that the partners don't even know what their intent is. They honestly don't know how successful they're going to be. They don't know how the working relationship is going to be. And trying to, I think, draft the kind of document that you can create after people have been in business together for a couple of years is can be a quite different thing based on how the business has evolved and the relationship they've settled into. But you should always start with one. You should always have a shareholders agreement from the get-go.
Comes back to that marriage too, right? When you marry somebody, you are this person. And then 10 years from now, you've changed, you've grown, you've evolved, and things may have changed in your relationship. That happens in business as well.
Absolutely.
You discover passions you didn't know you had in your business. You discover you absolutely hate things that you thought you would love. And having that documentation to go back to and say, okay, what does that mean for today?
Right. I think at some point in this series that we're doing, it will be very interesting to have a lawyer in here to let people know about some of the situations they've run into with even good shareholders agreement, more particularly bad shareholders agreement, or even worse, no shareholders agreement when businesses do dissolve, because those are arduous processes.
Absolutely. So I'm actually going to take this little piece and give it to you as a standalone on shareholders agreement, so you can choose to go watch the other piece. This is going to be a prequel. This is the prequel. And we'll label it as such on the channel, so that if you want to just kind of be thinking through and broaching a conversation about shareholders agreements without getting into the 7D nitty-gritty that the other one will take you to, I think this is actually a good one to sit down with your partners and just talk about, why do we really need to look at the shareholders agreement?
Right.